Hey, what's up, everybody? For this video, kind of got an idea from the Chris Jericho flag situation in Brazil to do something about role models. I think there's a lot of good role models and bad role models in professional wrestling, and I think it's very, very important as kids growing up to actually have some role models to look up to. So I just kind of made a list of about maybe 20 to 21 of the top pro wrestlers over the last 25 years, and I'm just going to give you my opinion of whether I think they were good role models or not to look up to. The Chris Jericho, let me just say, I just wish Chris Jericho the best. Not really a big deal. He'll be back in 30 days like nothing ever happened. It's just a situation with Jericho not really appreciating or understanding the ramifications of making a mockery out of somebody's flag overseas is totally different in the United States or in Canada. I think the HBK thing was still fresh in his mind, and the Sergeant Slaughter thing with burning the United States flag. It's always been something where, the heels would always do to get some heat. But, things have just changed. Not a big deal. Jericho will come back in 30 days, and maybe he'll stick around a little bit longer than anticipated. So who knows? It could be a blessing in disguise once again. So let's just get right down to the list. I just came up with a list of about 21 wrestlers. And, we got a lot of good role models and bad role models. And, this is another thing. If anyone wants to do a video response to try to get make a name for themselves, or try to get their channel out there, because I know it's very, very difficult on YouTube now to get views and subscribers. YouTube's become very, very oversaturated with just so many people making videos now. So if anyone if anyone wants to do a video response, just like you guys did for the dream matches, then feel free to do it. But, role models to me are very, very important. I know Charles Barkley had that commercial back in 1993 for Nike. He said, I am not a role model. He always stressed that, the kids should look up to their parents as role models. Well, unfortunately, not all of our parents are the end all be all. We don't always have, even when you're kids, you could always see, and personally for me, I could, you could see through everything when you're little. My parents, I love my parents and everything, but even I could see them do, they did a lot of idiotic things, and, I wouldn't say they were the best people to look up to. So I think it's very, very important that, I wouldn't say, look up to just one person, like look at Michael Jordan like he's the end all be all, like he could do no wrong, because that's not right. Jordan had his problems as well. I think everybody has their problems, but I think the thing is, I think we need to look up to, when you're a kid, you just look up to, a bunch of different people and just learn from their mistakes, and just, I think you want to take the best of the best and learn from the worst of the worst. So, I think that's just definitely the best way to approach it. And, as far as role models in professional wrestling, I think there's been a lot of good ones, and also there's been a lot of bad ones. So I'm just going to go through the list, and why not? Let's just start with Y2J Chris Jericho. As far as my thoughts on Jericho the person, and before I get into it, let me just say I don't mean to act like I know everything about all these guys. Obviously, I never met any of them. I never spent any quality time with them. So I'm just going on what's been publicized in the media and what my gut feeling is. And, I followed all these guys' careers, so I'm just giving you my actual opinion of, what they've done through their careers. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody on the list, which I'm really not. I wouldn't even consider myself someone that you could necessarily look up to, because I have my problems as well. But still, I'm just going to go through the list. Let's start with Chris Jericho. Now, to me, Jericho is the cream of the crop. I think he's right up there with the Bret Hart and the John Cena as someone that you could really, really look up to. I think, he's someone that's really paid his dues. He's worked his ass off to get where he is today. I mean, if you look at the degree of difficulty to get to the WWE, his path was probably the toughest. Wrestling in Mexico, Canada. He trained with Stu Hart, going over to Japan. Going over to Germany, all the shit with ECW and WCW. So he really pretty much took the full ride before he got to the WWE. So he's paid his dues, and on top of that, he's a father. He comes across very, very genuine in interviews. And he's someone that really has followed his dream. He just didn't stick to one thing with professional wrestling. He also went into music. He's a rock star and a WWE superstar. Didn't listen to the naysayers. Really, more than anybody has followed his dream. And So he is what he is today. He's very, very multi-dimensional. That's Chris Jericho. Now, so, I know Jericho's kind of a hothead. From time to time, he'll get into trouble with fans. This incident in Brazil, I wouldn't really look too much into it. It has nothing to do with Jericho, the person. If anything, this is Jericho going above and beyond the call of duty. I mean, this was just a house show. He didn't have to do that, but I respect him for trying to, at least do something different and at least, give something back to that crowd. So definitely, I would definitely say Chris Jericho is a good role model, a good guy, even though he can be a little bit hot-tempered at times, but it's never anything too serious with him. And more than anybody, this guy's been injury-free. That's something else you could look up to. And also, he's been very, very consistent, and he hasn't really, out of anybody, he's the one guy that's pretty much been stayed away from drugs. I mean, you really haven't heard of any drug problems with this guy, which you really can't say for his peers like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and a guy like Kurt Angle. So, like I said, Jericho, definitely a good role model. All right, let's move on to Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'll try to go through these as quickly as possible, but there's definitely a lot to say about some of these guys. With Stone Cold Steve Austin, the great thing about him is he speaks from the heart. He's as real as it gets. But sometimes when you're that real, and some people in hip hop are the same way, like they're so real that sometimes it could be their biggest flaw as well. With Austin, like if his heart isn't in something, and if he doesn't like something, he's not gonna suck it up and be the corporate kiss ass. He's gonna go against the grain. It happened in WCW where he told Bischoff off over the phone. I think Bischoff wanted to actually talk to him. And then he said to his wife, "Tell that son of a bitch I'm not coming in." And Bischoff actually heard the whole thing. It's just something you can't do in real life. Walking out of the company in 2002. Now, for me, I was still in high school at the time, and that really influenced me in a negative way, I would say. I felt bad about it and everything, but it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I put too much stock into it. Like, oh yeah, Austin could just walk out and, he could do whatever the fuck he wants. I'm going to act the same way. Like sometimes that year I would skip practice. I would, leave school early. I don't know. I just don't think at the time I really, it was really something I should have put too much stock into. Because if anything, people kind of embraced Austin for that, which shouldn't have been the case. There was guys like Triple H and, guys like, and even Vince McMahon that said this was totally unprofessional, and they were right. I thought it was extremely unprofessional because, Austin was, he was the man at the time, and all of a sudden things really weren't going his way. Guys like Hogan, Rock, and Triple H were kind of getting more of the spotlight. I don't know exactly what the problem was, but when you're that big of a name and you have people expecting to see you, it just wasn't the right way to do things. Even though it made Austin sound cool from a character standpoint, it was kind of really like, oh, he's living the character. Like, that's really him. If he's not really getting along with Vince McMahon, so boom, he's going to shove it up his ass. I mean, it really happened with Steve Williams, the person, and Steve Austin, the character. So it kind of made it cool, and it kind of built even more momentum for when Austin came back. But still, I just don't think that was the right way to do it. And, Austin's had some problems with, being a wife beater, and he's had a lot of problems at home with, alcohol problems. But, it's nothing to look too deep into. But Austin is, overall, I would still say Austin is a good role model because he's one of those guys that, paid his dues more than anybody. And really, he speaks from the heart. So that's Stone Cold Steve Austin. And on top of everything, even though I just went into depth about all his problems, he lives up and owns up to everything. He would even tell you that, walking out of the company was a dumb thing to do. So next up we have The Rock. Don't really want to say much about, Dwayne Johnson. I'm not a huge fan of the guy, but there's very, very little we can nitpick about. I mean, he's just somebody that has just done his job. I really appreciate, where he came from. Obviously he never really wanted to become a professional wrestler while he was growing up. It was just one of those situations where he really had no choice. He was in the CFL. He was barely making enough money to make a living. So, he rolled the dice and became a professional wrestler. He kind of had it the easy way, though. He had the connection. He had the look. It really wasn't as tough for Dwayne as it was for some of the other guys. But, as far as him being a professional in the business, he's someone that rarely has complained when it comes to doing jobs. He put over numerous guys on his way out. I think he's been a good a good professional, though. There's really not, like I said, there's really not a lot you could nitpick about. And, he is a good role model because he didn't really overstay his welcome. He knew when it was his time to go, and he conquered a totally different animal in, acting and making movies. And he became successful at it. So I could say that The Rock is definitely a good role model. And he seems like, in interviews, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of the guy, but like I said, he's you could really look up to him because of the degree of difficulty for conquering two totally different professions in professional wrestling and becoming an actor in Hollywood. All right, next up, let's go to Hulk Hogan. I kind of have mixed feelings with Hulk Hogan. I would say that the performer, the Hulk Hogan character in the late 80s, early 90s, the messages that he was portraying back then were definitely positive. Take your vitamins, say your prayers, all that stuff. Yeah, it's good stuff. Hogan came across with a lot of passion, a lot of intensity, and really, he was someone you could really believe in as a hero. I think a lot of people felt the same way, but I don't know. It just seems to me like after, I guess it was maybe like WrestleMania 9, or when he went to WCW, it felt like two totally different characters, two totally different people. And then on top of that, he's had a lot of crazy stuff happen with his family. Politically, supposedly Hogan's the worst. I mean, you've talked to anybody, a lot of people would tell you that the guy's very, very politically driven. Very, very dirty when it comes to politics backstage. I just don't know. You hear a lot of mixed things. A guy like Edge would tell you that Hogan was really, really cool. Then a guy like HBK would tell you that Hogan was a total dick. So it goes both ways. Overall, I would say Hogan's kind of in between. I can't really say he's a good role model or a bad role model. But, you could kind of classify him as greedy. I know a lot of times he's complained about the WrestleMania buyer, his WrestleMania bonuses and not getting enough money. So I don't know. But I'll say Hogan's kind of in the middle. All right, next up we move on to The Ultimate Warrior. I would say The Ultimate Warrior is a bad role model, but at the same time, Warrior has done a lot of great things. There's no denying how over the guy was. And I would even tell you, man, everybody looked up to this guy. He was, he just had such a great look. He had so much intensity. And, I was actually the Ultimate Warrior for Halloween after the SummerSlam 91 fallout with Vince McMahon. I didn't know about what happened backstage, but, the guy had the world in the palm of his hands until he lost all that momentum. Like the summer of 91, Ultimate Warrior was the hottest thing in not just professional wrestling, but just everything. Cartoons, larger-than-life characters, everything. Warrior was the man. But, that whole SummerSlam 91 thing, kind of, you just can't do it. Here's a guy, Vince McMahon, that is promoting the shit out of you. Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, in the match made in hell versus Sergeant Slaughter, General Adnine, and Colonel Mustafa. I mean, the match was so well promoted. Warrior was just becoming a bigger star by the day. And for him to just spit in Vince McMahon's face like that, before the show in a match that was advertised, it's just something you can't do, and it's just very, very unprofessional. And I don't think anyone should really look at that as something that you should do in the future. Now, let's give Warrior some slack. Obviously, we don't really know both sides of the story. Warrior did say he got screwed out of his WrestleMania bonus at WrestleMania 7. But still, it's just very, very unprofessional, and the guy was just out there. A lot of people have complained about Warrior just not appreciating everything that Vince McMahon gave him. So I don't know what to tell you. But I will tell you this about Warrior. Like some of his YouTube videos, if you haven't watched any, definitely check him out. His motivational speeches about nutrition and, working out and fighting off resistance. It's a lot of positive stuff. And he's got a lot of intensity, and so there is some good things about the Warrior, but because of, some of the shit that he pulled backstage, I gotta say, he's not the greatest role model. All right, now let's move on to Kurt Angle. This is tough because I looked up to Kurt Angle more than anybody. Back in like 2001 in the NBA, I used to hate, even though I love Kobe now, I used to hate Kobe. You really can't look up to a guy like Allen Iverson, even though the guy was the best basketball player in the world in 2001. I don't see anyone looking up to a guy like Shaq. And, Jordan was retired. So I was really struggling, to find a role model, someone that I could really look up to as like an inspirational figure. And, I would say that the guy that really came around for me was Kurt Angle. I thought this guy was legit, gold medalist in amateur wrestling. You know, the guy's great condition. Every time he goes out there, has the greatest match on the show. He's a hell of a competitor. I would say that Angle has the same kind of competitive spirit that a guy like Jordan has, without a doubt. But, you know, with Kurt, it's just, I don't know, man. It just seems like, and you really can't blame him, though. I would still say Kurt Angle's a good role model because no one's really had to encounter or endure what he's gone through. I mean, he's put his body through so much with his neck, you know, wrestling with a broken neck in the Olympics, you know, needing neck surgery and actually wrestling Brock Lesnar in the main event of WrestleMania. These are things that no one else has done. Not a lot of people can say that they've put their body through. So I can't really blame Kurt Angle for taking painkillers to, to get through working on a daily basis. It's a tough situation. I know he's had some alcohol problems. He's had DUI stops. He's got, he's had some marital issues. So I really don't know. You know, Kurt's, my biggest problem with Kurt right now is I don't feel like he's doing his legacy any justice by staying in TNA. I feel like he's kind of become a little bit too complacent, to tell you the truth. You know, I think for his legacy, I think he really needs to come back to the WWE. And, I think a lot of it has to do with Kurt and WWE being very, very cautious about his health. But I do think, the final straw, he needs to, be in a match at WrestleMania for his last match. But, I think complacency and just, he screwed up a lot, Kurt Angle. And, but overall, I would say the guy's still a hell of a role model just because of his competitiveness. So there we go. We have Kurt Angle. Next guy I want to talk about is Chris Benoit. I don't really want to go into depth with this because it's a very, very touchy subject. I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone in the world could consider Benoit a great role model after what happened. But until what happened, he was pretty much, a model employee. There's no one's ever had any bad things to say about the guy. I mean, I think Steve Austin summed it up the best in his book. He said, if you have, if you want to give your wallet to somebody, and if you want to count on all that money still being in the wallet after you get it back, and then Chris Benoit will be that guy. So, Benoit, I just think he was just too emotional. I think after Eddie Guerrero's death, things just got too out of hand. He just became a totally different person, I think. And I just don't know. I just think the guy needed help, and he wasn't that type of guy. He was very, very private. So I just don't know what happened. I would still say, the darkest moment ever as a wrestling fan is when the situation with Benoit happened. I mean, you could blame so many things: the alcohol, the steroids, the drug addiction, the neck surgery, the constant, chair shots to the face. I mean, no one's had an encounter with guys like Angle and Benoit have, encountered. These are guys that went above and beyond the call of duty to be respected in their field. So very, very delicate situation. But overall, I'm going to say, you just can't consider Benoit a good role model. All right, next up we have Rob Van Dam, the whole fucking show. It's funny because I think Van Dam, athletically and as far as discipline goes, I think stretching is very, very underrated. Stretching is something that a lot of athletes kind of, take for granted. But I think, the Rob's discipline when it comes to stretching and being prepared is something that's been unparalleled. I mean, the guy can do things that nobody else can do in the ring. So, you can look up to Van Dam for his athleticism. But overall, I wouldn't say that Rob Van Dam is a good role model. It has to do with a lot of reasons, and not just because of the drug problems with the smoking weed. I mean, I don't smoke weed, but, if someone did, it's not really a terrible thing, is it? But, with RVD, my biggest problem with him is he just seems kind of complacent. And sometimes it seems like he just lacks passion. There was a whole thing with Triple H, rumored to be holding him back. They used the whole Elimination Chamber fiasco as, reason to bury him. But I just don't think really Rob Van Dam fought hard enough. It felt like he just became complacent. He took the paycheck. Really didn't fight to the bone, to achieve as much as he could have. Give him credit. He did eventually win the title. He fought really hard with trying to bring ECW back. But it just seems like when things don't go Rob's way, he just acts very, very unmotivated. So I can't really say he's a good role model in that regard. And then when you do finally win the WWE Championship, eventually, he got busted for smoking pot with Sabu. So I can't, he just kind of shot himself in the foot right there. So, all right, next up we have Shawn Michaels, HBK. Now, I would say that Shawn's a great role model, actually. Even though he's had his flaws, with fornicating with the Canadian flag and, just acting like a complete asshole or a dick during the 90s. Pretty much thought he was better than everybody. That was the reputation that Shawn had. But, I think it's great when you can, and I think taking those 4 years off totally helped him. I just think it's a great story when you could take time off, learn from your mistakes, come back. And then, I just think he's been a really cool-hearted guy since he came back. Obviously, maybe there's still some politically, he hasn't been the nicest guy and hasn't been the best decision maker. Maybe that's still the case. I'm not really sure. There's been arguments that, Shawn should have done a much better job of trying to put young talent over on his way out, like a guy like CM Punk. And, you go up and down the list, but I really wouldn't look too much into that. I think the guy has, evolved so much as a person. I don't know if you attribute it all to religion. I just think having time away from the business definitely made him mature. And, I would say he's one of the best. He's one of the guys you could definitely look at, and he's definitely a father figure. I really would. And as far as the other great thing about Shawn is he's not gonna half-ass it. Anytime this guy's promoted for a big money match, you could always count on Shawn Michaels to deliver. So that's another good thing right there. And on top of that, it's been, it's pretty well known. He's a great father and a great husband. So I would definitely say Shawn Michaels is a good role model. Next up, we have Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret Hart, when we talk about great role models in pro wrestling, more than anybody, Bret Hart really stands out as the guy. Let's talk about Bret's flaws first. I mean, the screw job, not wanting to do the job to Shawn, which he has his reasons behind that. And I think one of the biggest problems Bret had, though, was dwelling on the past, which is a problem I actually have as well. It's a very, very, it's more serious than people think, dwelling on the past. It can really affect you emotionally. And, let's face it, Bret really, it took him a while to get over all the anger that happened from Owen's death and the WWE fucking him over. It took a really, really long time. But as far as the positive things about Bret, I really feel like he pushed hard for that Hitman character to deliver really strong messages. I mean, how many times have you heard Bret Hart fans saying that, Bret really inspired me to never give up and, go for that degree or, just keep pursuing my dream. That was Bret's message, never give up. And, all dreams are possible. So, that was, that's what Bret Hart really stressed, Man, the guy is a hell of a role model. I would say he's definitely one of the best. So the excellence of execution. And the other thing about Bret is, even though the WWE, saw that, acting dirty and sexually would, bring on the ratings, Bret was one of those guys that took a stance. That took a stand and really pushed hard for the WWE to remain family friendly and to, be something that kids could still watch. So I definitely respect Bret for taking that stance. Next up, we have John Cena. John Cena, the doctor of thugonomics. Let me say, Cena is a good role model. There's really nothing you could complain about. I mean, maybe there's some politics going on backstage with him and Vince that we don't know about. That's been reported several times. I'm not sure, but I'll tell you what about this guy. I've listened to interviews with him for almost 10 years now, and the biggest thing we could take away from John Cena is commitment. The guy's very, very committed to the company. He's someone that will do anything the company wants. And, I even remember Cena saying, I'm here to work. If they want me to clean the toilets, I'll do it. So it's just something that, Cena's gone above and beyond the Call of Duty as far as, promoting shows, doing interviews, just being there for the company and pretty much staying injury free for the most part, besides a couple of questionable bumps. So definitely respect John Cena. His message is definitely strong. And let's even think back. Back when WWE used to do Confidential and some of their other shows, he was always the guy that was willing to do the extra stuff for the benefit of the company. So John Cena, definitely a company man. He's definitely a one of the most committed guys you'll ever see. So commitment. That's John Cena. Next up, we have Randy Orton. It's kind of like Shawn Michaels. It's kind of like you have the bad side and the good side. Sometimes when you see Randy Orton walk out to the ring, you'd be like, wow, this guy's like the biggest prick I've ever seen. he does look like a legit prick, and he's done some pretty crappy things, and he's also had some drug problems apparently. Well, he also had some steroid issues. He actually was under a lot of pressure at the time. Very, very young, the youngest world champion ever. So it's understandable if he was under a lot of pressure, to make his body look as good as it could. But the thing about Randy Orton, with as far as some of the negative things, and I would lean Orton towards more of a not so much of a role model. If you guys remember some of the stuff, I think it was some of the divas from the Diva Search, maybe like Amy Weber. It was reported he actually took a shit in some of their luggage. So he would just sometimes. I think Orton thought he was such a hot guy, or thought he was like above and beyond everybody, that he felt like he could get any girl he wants. And, I guess he thought he could pretty much get away with anything. Like if a girl rejected him, he would just act in a negative way and kind of, try to shit on them, literally with that luggage thing. I'm not so sure if it's even true, but I remember that's what was reported. And I definitely know he did have some problems with some of the divas, but yeah, I mean, some of the other stuff about Randy Orton, it's just, I don't know, sometimes the lackadaisical effort in the ring, I just don't feel like it lives up to his potential. And sometimes that's not something you really want to look up to. But on the flip side of it, ever since he got married and had a kid, he's been a totally different person. He's wanted to stay injury free. He's just like John Cena, just another one of those guys that's been committed to the company. One of the problems I do have with him, and you could even blame Cena for this as well, I think I particularly remember the Mr. Anderson thing. And maybe it's valid or not, I don't know, but he felt like Anderson was almost hurt him in the ring, and that's what led to Kennedy or Anderson getting fired, because he actually hurt John Cena towards pectoral last time he was in the ring with him. So, I think Orton's kind of politically driven sometimes, and he could kind of has a tendency to go behind people's backs and talk shit about them. So that's another thing. But Randy Orton, I would say he's Randy Orton right now is an okay role model. I wouldn't say he's great, but overall for his career, I would say not so much. All right, so next up we have CM Punk. Just like Stone Cold Steve Austin, just one of those guys that shoots from the heart. You're gonna get the real deal with CM Punk. And just like Chris Jericho, he was the king of the indies. Pretty much paid his dues and came up the hard way. Really not much to say about him, but I would say yes, CM Punk is definitely a good role model. I mean. It's, some people here and there will say he's kind of a dick or whatever, but sometimes that's what happens when you tell the truth. Next up, we have Bryan Danielson. Yes, he's a good role model. I definitely, from what I've seen, watching the documentary Wrestling Road Diaries, and just hearing his interviews, and the integrity this guy has, to get fired and to maintain a level head and to come back. And didn't really bitch about getting squashed at WrestleMania. Just kind of, just did his job, and everything just followed suit. So I think the guy's a hell of a person, and he really, and particularly in Ring of Honor as well. I really love the way he went out of his way to, put over everybody on his way out, like Chris Hero, Austin Aries, and Davey Richards. And so yeah, Daniel Bryan definitely is a good guy from what I've seen so far. But who knows? Sometimes you just never know. Sometimes a guy might totally turn. Once they have the success, and once they have the fame, once they have the spotlight, sometimes it just turns people. Next up, we have Triple H. I would say that Triple H getting to where he is, the whole evolution thing, really evolving. It's really, really a cool story, to tell you the truth. All the shit that he took from that Click incident, kind of making a negative into a positive with that promo. That's something you could definitely look up to. But, let's face it. I mean, every single documentary, even WWE documentaries, if you watch the Edge documentary, Edge crapped on him in that documentary. Definitely, as far as someone that was a political beast, Triple H. I wouldn't say he totally sabotages people's careers, but if Triple H doesn't think someone is right for the job, he's going to speak up and let it be known. So that's something you can admire about him, but at the same time, there's been times in the past where I feel like it's kind of been out of jealousy because, maybe he can't do some of the stuff that RVD and Jericho could do. Maybe he can't, cut a promo as well as a guy like Edge or John Cena. So I don't know. I think Triple H has a tendency to become jealous, and I think he has. One thing I don't like about him is I feel like he really kind of piggybacked off of the Click and Shawn Michaels, and I just felt like it was kind of forced. But give him credit though. The Click took a liking to him, and he became one of their friends. So I can't knock him for that. But he is very politically driven. So I can't really say he's been a good or a bad role model. Some people don't like politics, but sometimes, sometimes you got to give Triple H credit just for getting the job done, whether you play politics or not. Next up, let's go to Brock Lesnar. I would say that Brock Lesnar's not really a good role model. He's very much like an introvert, and sometimes I'm kind of the same way. Like, he doesn't really he's not the type of person that wants to spend all the time at the airport, just waiting around for his luggage, saying hello to everybody, and putting on a smile and signing autographs. That's not Brock Lesnar. Brock is a very, very private person, so I can't really knock him for that. But I think some of the great qualities about Lesnar is he just doesn't settle. I love the way that he didn't settle. The WWE, it's the WWE's fault. They pushed him way too hard back in 2002, 2003, and it became to the point where it just kind of got boring for him. Everything he did was kind of, Lesnar had already done everything. But the one knock on Lesnar is like when things don't go his way, he kind of acts like a baby. Wanting his, he bought his own private jet so he didn't have to travel, which is a good thing. His reasons for that is he wanted to have some more time to work out so he could be better prepared. I think that's something you can admire. But I don't know. I think the only flaw Lesnar has is I wouldn't say he's a team player. I think he's and more than anybody, he's very, very selfish. So I think selfishness is what kind of hurts Brock Lesnar. But just like Angle, the guy's a hell of a competitor. He doesn't like to lose. And preparation, too. Lesnar will work harder than anybody to prepare. So, and I think it's also admirable how he was away from the WWE for 8 years, but then he comes back and wrestles a 4.5-star match with John Cena in the main event of a pay-per-view. It looks like he didn't miss a step. So I definitely respect that about Brock. All right, so let's move on to Jeff Hardy. I would say that Jeff Hardy is not a good role model. Definitely not. I mean, even though the guy jumps around and takes a lot of risks, takes a lot of chances, puts his body on the line, that's something you could admire. But, the drug problems, too many drug problems. A lot of guys in TNA right now, I just feel like they're there because, the WWE won't allow them in because of, problems with drugs. And it's kind of become like a drug rehab center, TNA right now. But, the whole situation with him showing up unprepared like that, losing this thing in about 20 seconds because he couldn't really wrestle because he was high or he was all fucked up. It's inexcusable. And, it's just, I don't know. He's just got problems. I mean, I wouldn't say he's a bad guy. I think Jeff is a pretty cool guy, but it's just, I really wouldn't consider him someone you could look up to. All right, a guy like Kevin Nash, sometimes he's kind of has a reputation of being lazy. Type of guy that would say, hey, I could just sit on my ass the whole time and still get paid. He's that type of guy. I wouldn't say he really he doesn't have a reputation for having a strong work ethic. So overall, I would say Nash is not someone you could particularly look up to. And if you read Eddie Guerrero's book, Eddie actually said he's the one guy that you could classify as evil. So for Eddie to go out of his way to say that, then something must not be right. All right, let's talk about Edge, the rated R superstar. There's kind of a lot of mixed feelings about Edge, too. The way he went behind Matt Hardy's back and had an affair with Lita. People are human. If you fall in love with somebody and you're on the road, you're lonely, I can't really blame him for doing that. I think Edge and Lita definitely had a lot in common, probably a lot more in common than Lita and Matt Hardy had if you just looking at it from the outside. But Edge is, he's had some steroid problems. He's been divorced a couple times. I mean, so what? I mean, it's just, these are type of things that I think you really can't judge people by. It's, I think that the great thing about Edge is, perseverance, battling through the neck injuries, taking all those bumps and being told that you're only going to be a tag team wrestler, and then still persevering and winning the championship and becoming basically one of the most decorated champion that the WWE has ever seen. I mean, who's had more championships than Edge if you count them all up? 11-time world champion, like 7-time IC champion, 8-time, like 9-time tag champion. I mean, so Edge is definitely somebody. And as far as paying dues too, hearing about what this type of stuff that Edge went through in Canada, training and having that whole fiasco where him and Rhino and Christian and the training crew almost got sunken below into the ice. That was crazy right there. So yeah, Edge is definitely I would definitely say he's more of a good guy than a bad guy, definitely. And he's as far as in professional wrestling too, Edge has always been someone that's always been a team player. He's I don't remember Edge ever being difficult to work with as far as doing jobs go. Edge has always been someone that has been in favor of benefiting the company. So there we go with that. All right, the other guy I'll talk about is Ric Flair. Obviously Flair's had such a great career. I think as far as, being prepared, wrestling in a day in and day out basis, not wanting any time off, just go. As far as, work ethic goes, I'm not so sure if it gets any better than a guy like Ric Flair. However, though, I would say that the sex stuff, screwing women every other night, living that kind of lifestyle, not something, it's something that I really don't think it's that bad, to tell you the truth. It sounds kind of fun, but getting divorced a couple times and having some marital problems. Flair's been through it all. Kind of. I think the biggest problem with Flair right now is kind of hanging on to his spot. I think the worst thing Flair ever did was getting that emotional send off and still going back and wrestling in a lower promotion like TNA. It's just kind of, I don't know. It just made him look bad. So, but overall, you can't knock Flair. Flair's definitely had a great career, and I don't think he's a bad guy at all. I think he does have a temper. He has his flaws, but it's not to the point where you really want to, knock him for it. So I would say Flair's definitely a good guy. And the final guy I'll talk about on the list is Bill Goldberg. What a good-hearted guy is Bill Goldberg. Man, I'm not a fan of Goldberg, and I could do a whole video about, what happened in 2003. I know a lot of people feel like Goldberg was totally underutilized and the way they used him was all wrong. I disagree with that. I just felt like the business totally changed by that point. If you to have a guy like Goldberg squash Jericho, who was the MVP of the company at the time, I was just totally against that. But Bill Goldberg is someone that just, he wasn't a wrestling fan. He's not someone that really loved the business. And I just thought he was very, very selfish. Didn't really want to work hard. Even Triple H, exposed him on Tough Enough. When someone had a Goldberg poster up, he said, what's that doing on the wall? It's a guy that, doesn't respect their business. Every time he has a tummy ache or a toenail, he has to go home and take time off. So, Goldberg's always had that reputation. I wouldn't say you want to look up to someone that's always trying to take the easy way out. I know Goldberg said, I don't care if I didn't pay my dues. I pay my dues on the football field. No, I respect Bill Goldberg, Bill for becoming a professional athlete and for, making it to the NFL and making it to the dance like that. But I don't know. It's someone that really got behind his look. He was very, very intimidating. But I really don't feel like Bill Goldberg really worked for his success. And by the time he's one of those guys. By the time he got to the main event level, he thought he was above everybody else. So I wouldn't say Goldberg is someone you could really look up to. I really don't care how many animals he has or how much work he does with charity. That's something you could appreciate. But as far as his career goes, I really don't think. If you're a wrestler, if you're trying to become a professional wrestler, I don't think a guy like Bill Goldberg is someone you could really look up to and say, that's the guy that I want to emulate. So that's pretty much it. Maybe you guys could do a video response to this. And you know, I know YouTube's been kind of like, I don't even know if I talked about this already, but I know YouTube is it's kind of tough to get subscribers and views and people to comment on the videos nowadays. It's so oversaturated with, you know, people making videos. So if anyone wants to do a video response, feel free. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and take it easy.